Hi, Jessica Nadav bringing you this week's Devar Torah for Parashat Korach. And I'd like to dedicate this Devar Torah for the Refuah Shalema of my mother, Simcha Violeta Bat Miriam, my brother-in-law, Eric Yitzchak Ben Miriam, my mother-in-law, Chava Freidel Bat Atita Malka, my old Rav, Harav Shimon Ben Sarah, and my doctor, Shemuel Yosef Ben Rachel. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them Refuah Shalema, and in the merit of all our soldiers, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect them and bring peace to Israel. Now, first, again, I want to repeat what I said the last couple of weeks, which we are out of sync with Israel in terms of the portions of the parasha that of the Torah that we're reading, as I've said in the last few weeks. But this week's parasha, this week's portion in Chutz La'aretz, in outside of Israel, is Korach. And in this week's parasha, we find Moshe Rabbeinu's cousin, Korach, first cousin, Korach, together with Datan, Aviram, and On from the tribe of Reuven. They stage a rebellion against Moshe and Aharon. Although later we see that On drops out of the picture, having been dissuaded by his wife to partake in this rebellion. So they gather 250 men of renown and accuse Moshe and Aharon of taking all the power for themselves. They claim that the whole of Bnei Israel is holy, so why do they, Moshe and Aharon, raise themselves above the rest of Hashem's congregation? Now, from the simple meaning of the text, it's not clear what exactly they take issue with, other than Moshe and Aharon so-called exalting themselves or taking the power from the people. From Moshe's response, we learn that what they're taking issue specifically with is the appointment of Aharon as high priest, as Kohen Gadol. So Moshe is very distressed about this dispute, and he proposes that the next day they all take part in a test which would determine who in fact had been chosen by Hashem, who'd been chosen by God to be the Kohen Gadol, to be the high priest. They would each bring an offering of incense to the Mishkan, to the sanctuary, and Hashem would make known his choice. In the meantime, Moshe speaks to Korach and the sons of Levi, whoever they are, and asks them if it's not enough that Hashem has already given them a special role within Bnei Israel, as Levites, as Leviim, that they now have to ask for more. He warns them that if they fail in this test, they're going to die, and he tries to dissuade them from taking part in this suicidal test. Now, clearly this is a political campaign, because Korach spends the rest of the night trying to incite the people to go against Moshe and Aharon, and he gathers them to the entrance of the Mishkan, of the sanctuary, to witness the spectacle. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail about what happens next, but in summary, we're told that the earth opens and swallows up Datan, Aviram, their families, and all the people who were with Korach. At the same time, a heavenly fire consumes the rest of the 250 rebels who are offering up the incense. The incense pans that they used for their offering would be flattened and would plate the copper altar to act as a sign for the people not to do a Kohen's job and not to be like Korach. It would be a very good reminder. So later in the parasha, later on in the portion, Hashem instructs Moshe to bring a further proof of Aharon's greatness and chosenness. Okay, each tribe should bring a staff inscribed with the name of the leader of that tribe. The tribe of Levi would have Aharon's name on it, and all the staffs are placed in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary, overnight. The staff of the person that is chosen would bloom, that Hashem has chosen rather, would bloom. In the morning when Moshe enters the sanctuary, Aharon's staff has budded with almond blossoms and almonds. Why almonds, are you going to ask me? Well, the letters of the word almonds in Hebrew, shekedim, can be rearranged to spell the word kedoshim, holy, which is another bit of evidence that Hashem has chosen Aharon as the high priest, the holy one amongst the nation. So Moshe returns all the staffs except for Aharon's, which would be kept there as a reminder against any future claims against Aharon. Okay, so what was Korach's issue? So according to the Midrash, he argued that if a room is filled with Sifrei Torah, is filled with Torah scrolls, why should it need a mezuzah on the doorpost as well? The whole room is holy, so why does it now need an extra thing? So the text of the mezuzah is already contained in all the scrolls in the room. Okay? Equally, if an entire garment is made from the techeles wool, this blue wool that one is supposed to make the tzitzit from, the fringes from, why must one make one strand of tzitzit out of the wool when the whole garment is already made out of that wool, out of this techeles wool? The garment is already holy. Why do you need the fringes of techelet? Now, ostensibly, these are good questions, they're good points. And had he been asking these questions because he was really interested in the answers, that would have been laudable. But he wasn't. It's clear that he wasn't. That he was just trying to be argumentative and trying to make a point and score points and run down people. He was trying to give across a populist message. The Mishnah in the Ethics of Our Fathers in Pirkei Avot considers the rebellion of Korach as a dispute that was shelo l'shem shamayim, that an argument that was not for the sake of heaven. Now I'm going to tread very carefully here and suggest a very subtle and delicate point that should be considered with caution. What Korach was arguing was that the whole congregation are all inherently holy. God is within them all. He seems to be suggesting that the Kedusha, the sanctity of the people, requires no further work. The fact that they're inherently holy means that they're perfect already. They don't need to do anything else. They don't need to grow spiritually. No individual is better or worse than another. Hence, no one needs to perform any mitzvot, keep any of the commandments, because they're all holy anyway. The midrashim, the midrashim that I mentioned before, that I alluded to already, allude to this point, okay, that inherent holiness needs no external signs or rituals to bolster it. If you're holy, you don't need anything else. However, looking closely at Kedusha, the idea or the concept of sanctity in the Torah, we see that nothing is inherently holy. Nothing has inherent sanctity. No place, no item, no time, even. Now you're going to tell me, okay, but Jessica, you told us when we discussed Parashat Bereshit, when we discussed the first chapter of Genesis, you told us that Hashem imbued time with sanctity. He called the seventh day holy. He made time holy. So even that needs us to sanctify the day. We need to sanctify the day. Okay, the stones that of the destroyed temple of the Beit HaMikdash are just that, they're stones. They're now no more or less holy than any others in their vicinity. They had to be made holy. They had to be sanctified. And in fact, the opening of Parashat Kedoshim, which we discussed a few weeks ago, says it most clearly. Kedoshim tihu. Usually we translate this as be holy. But this isn't quite accurate. The verb lihyot in Hebrew, although we use it in modern Hebrew as to be, is better translated as to become. And this is clear from God's first words in the first chapter of Bereshit, of Genesis. Yehi or. We inaccurately translate it as let there be light. It might be better expressed as let light become, or let become light. So Kedoshim Tihu is probably best translated as become holy rather than be holy. Through the performance of mitzvot, of the commandments, and through spiritual growth, we can attain higher levels of Kedusha, of holiness, of sanctity. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu understood that Korach wasn't getting. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu desired when he said, would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his spirit upon them. However, he understood perhaps better than anyone else that it takes work, development, preparation to attain any level of proficiency, especially with regard to sanctity and spirituality. Korach thought it was sufficient to just be. We're all holy, so we can just be. But the Jewish way is to keep growing, to keep becoming, to keep working to achieve holiness and sanctity. That's the Jewish way. We have to keep developing. Life is a spiral upwards, and we have to keep striving for that. Shabbat Shalom from the Kol Megadim team.